Welcome to the Growth Shift. I'm David Zylstra. Here's what I've learned after years in business. Every leader who's built something meaningful has a story, but the moment they had to shift, when failure forced innovation, when change became opportunity, when they chose growth over comfort. On this show, we dive into those pivotal moments, the setbacks that became breakthroughs, the strategic shifts that accelerated growth, and the frameworks that turn obstacles into opportunities. Because here's the truth. In a world where change is the only constant, the leaders who thrive aren't the ones who avoid failure. They're the ones who've learned to shift strategically through it. So whether you're facing your own pivot point or just want to learn from someone who's been there, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Today on the show, we're joined by Kyle Baxter, founder of Big Bulldog Consulting and former #1 10X business advisor. Kyle's journey from Army Ranger and Special Forces veteran to successful business owner to top tier business advisor tells a fascinating story of resilience and strategic adaptation. After running his own convenience store for nearly 13 years, using what he calls the trial and error method, Kyle experienced firsthand the burnout that destroys 97% of small businesses within 10 years. That painful lesson became his greatest asset, transforming him into an advisor who helps business owners build the systematic foundations he wished he'd had, taking companies from startup chaos to 125 million in revenue using proven frameworks instead of costly mistakes. Kyle, it's great to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to it. You guys, I know you got a great thing going on, and you'll probably figure that out from me. I'm pretty passionate about what I do. Do I get paid? Yeah, but you know what? I'd probably do it if I didn't, because you hit on that. My first, big business, it was a convenience store. I expanded, and at that time, you know what you know what you don't know. It's what you don't know that bites you in the butt as a business owner, and that's just fact. And I was that guy. And so I did a little group, I grew it and I scaled it. I grew that business to 1.5 million, which is really not much. I know some solopreneurs go, man, that's great. I wish I could get my business to 1.5 million. But quite honestly, you really got to get past the 3 million revenue mark to get out of the startup phase. And that's not my guidelines. That's like Wall Street and business world guidelines. Pretty much you're still in the startup phase at 3 million and you keep going up to breakpoints.
Now, you have a pretty incredible background even before that, Kyle. I mean, you went from jumping out of airplanes with, Rangers and Special Forces to running this convenience store where you experienced these challenges first, right? That kind of paved that path forwards for you. Can you walk us through that transition? I mean, what drove you to entrepreneurship after military service?
Well, I got out of the military. I got to be a certified electrician, wiring, building stuff. Mostly not residential, but commercial. Enjoyed it. Worked with a lot of guys, learned a lot of stuff. Probably one of my biggest mentors, and there was a guy from Big Don, I called him, he was from Long Island, New York, okay? And he used to call me the redneck. Hey, redneck, come over here. And he'd look over me. I'm doing things. If I did something wrong, hey, redneck, you sure you want to do that? And I'd just stop. Go, what are you talking about? What do you mean, Yankee? We had this back and forth. But I learned a lot from him. We did that. But, my whole goal from even being a kid is I want to be like a rich guy, wealthy. And, as a kid, you don't really understand money. You just think go buy towards your stuff. What I saw as a kid was these wealthy individuals got to do what they wanted to do, when they wanted to do it. They had everything, and they all seemed to be happy. You kids are pretty perceptive. You know stuff. I was a big fan of Superman. I got it on my right shoulder. Superman emblem right here. Had it for years. I always wanted to fly, do those things. So, the town I grew up in was kind of falling apart. What a whole bunch of industry coming in. And like most people, what are you going to do? You're going to leave home. Let's get away from home. Let's go see the vast, huge world out there. There's got to be more than just what we have here at home, right? And so that was kind of my philosophy. I wanted to get to this successful, wealthy or rich person, so I could do what I want, when I want, and enjoy life. I mean, to me, I thought that's what it's about. So to get out of town, the quickest way was going to the military. And so that got me. That was my strategy for getting out of town. I did. And of course, it gave me some framework, some leadership, a lot of leadership from it, and gave me some guidance and structure that you need in everyday life. So the military really helped me. I wasn't any authority guy to hear my dad talk. You think, and I probably was the worst kid. I got a brother and sister. I'm the baby, and I was also the worst kid. I told my dad years ago. I said, Dad, you'd been better off getting rid of me. I was the biggest pain in your butt. You should just sit me on down the street. Thank God he didn't. He taught me a lot. But, that was my goal. So I go in the military and doing this stuff, but you don't make a lot of money in the military. I'm combat vet and did a lot of things, fought for the country and all that. And I enjoyed what I did. Had a lot of great experiences, in the leadership side, which you got to have as a business owner. Leadership's really a top priority, because you are the inspiration for your business. I don't care if you're a solopreneur, you got 10 employees or 100 employees. At the end of the day, the buck stops you as a leader. You need to show that leadership every day and develop your people. Develop your internal leaders versus hiring them from outside. It's just part of it. So I got that, and I'll have to kind of break that down a little bit. I did learn a lot of leadership in the military, but I have to tell you there's a difference from military leadership versus civilian leadership. And there's a lot of vets, and I think I can speak for them. When they come out, that's a big transition from military leadership to civilian leadership. Because in the military, I had stripes on my collar, and that dictated that I was the boss. And what I said go, when I say jump, you just say how high, what time do you want me to come down. And, in today's world, you go into corporate USA and go dictating, issuing orders to employees to see what happens. You're going to get a pushback, and you're going to destroy morale. You're going to destroy any initiative or any ownership that employee has, because you can't. But in the military, that's the requirement. That type of leadership needed to be there. And even then, just because I had the stripes didn't mean my guys would respect me. I had to earn that respect. And leadership's not about being a boss. Leadership is taking people under you and lifting them up, providing better opportunities for them. And a lot of business owners, I know, I talk to them all the time, they get in this mindset of, I'm the boss. Anybody can be a boss. I can take a 13-year-old bully and go be a boss. Boss gets you nowhere. Leadership is different, big difference. That's the only way you're going to survive. Bosses don't last. And I know I can show you businesses that had a boss, not a leader, and they were part of that statistics. Within 10 to 5 years, they're down because they can't keep any good help. They're running their own people off. But anyway,
I got to jump in here, Kyle. I mean, you had a pretty incredible journey there, right? From, joining the military to get out of your hometown, right? Perhaps growing up in the military, in a sense, becoming a leader, learning systems, learning discipline, and then coming back to the civilian world and realizing, I was a leader there and I want to be an entrepreneur and perhaps apply what I've learned to entrepreneurship and business ownership. But maybe there was a disconnect as well between what leadership meant in the military versus the civilian world as well, which is what I think you're getting towards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's probably the long method to it. But, the military is you bark an order, people respond, you do it. In the civilian world, it doesn't work that way. You have employees. The starters, all businesses have the mission, vision, and their core guiding processes for their business. And so everybody needs to be on the same page. And so there you may say, okay, guys, now you joined a team. Our mission for our company is to be the number one marketing guru in the Northwest or what have you. And so everybody needs to be on. So everybody has that same goal, and everybody's striving for the same thing. So they're aligned. They're on there. And there would be questions. So ask employees, hey, what do you think? Here is my vision. What are some of the ways that you can think of to help us get there bigger, better, and faster? And a lot of employees go, what? Nobody's ever asked them that. Because, you're just an employee, you don't count. Yes, they do count, because you can't scale a business without people. It takes people. One person, I don't care how smart you are, and I've told this before, Elon Musk, super smart guy. Some people like him, some don't, doesn't matter. In there, richest guy in the world right now. He's got a lot of employees. He didn't build all his rocket companies, his Tesla company and all that stuff by himself. It takes people to do that. And so that's transformation, get back on that, from military to civilian. A lot of vets run into problems with that because they don't know how to do that transition. I was kind of fortunate. I was able to do it. And maybe I went from the military in. I was a cop for a little while, and that's still high adrenaline stuff. So maybe that helped me par down somewhat, or transition a little smoother in the civilian world. Because when you're dealing with the public, you got to deal with people. You got to explain things to them, make them understand why you want to go in this direction. In the military, I didn't have to never have any of my guys. I said, move your butt, flank left. They're not going to say, hey, Sergeant, why are we doing that? Because that 30 seconds or 10 seconds to get them killed and the rest of the team killed, they got to have enough faith in me to know I'm telling them to do the right thing, and they've had the training where they just respond and we'll get through it. Civilian world, you got to explain things. You got to have people in line. They got to be in line with your mission. And if they're aligned on the same page, you're going to grow just tremendously. And a lot of business owners don't see that. They look at their employees as instead of an asset, as it costs them money. I've talked to new business owners, and two questions I usually ask: what's your current revenue level? And then the second question is, how many employees do you have? And the reason I ask that is because that kind of tells me in the framework of growth and scale where the business is currently at. And, a lot of times I don't say, what's your revenue? I'll get one or two answers. It's one, none of your damn business, and I get that. I'm not being nosy. Or two, they're lowering their head and they're kind of mumbling, well, it has me, because they're ashamed. Don't be ashamed. Everybody has to start somewhere. When I started my business, I didn't have a pot to piss in and one to throw it out of. When you buy a convenience store, I was able to get money to buy the building and redo it and stuff, but the inventory is totally separate. I had to come up with money to buy the inventory because banks don't lend money on inventory, because you can sell that, there's no protection for them. I get that.
So if we look at this transition, right, from your time in the military, from the leadership that you earned, the leadership that you were due as, with the stripes on your collar, moving into the civilian world, needing to sort of earn leadership by earning trust in a different way.
Dictator leadership to a servant leadership. You hear a lot of that term going on now, servant leadership. And I get that. I'm all into servant leadership, but it depends on who you're talking to and who's preaching it or practicing whether I agree with them or not. Some of it's stupid because you hear servant leadership. So I'm a servant. I'm in charge. I'm the boss. They don't get that. Your job's true leadership. John Maxwell is a mentor of mine, first friend of mine, a great guy. I've learned so much from him. He's been teaching leadership for over 50 years. And you ask him today, and John will tell you today, I'm not perfect at leadership, but he's been teaching. How do you say that he's been teaching it 50 years? Because he says, I learn something new every day. And even his CEO, currently the reason this CEO of his company, why I hired him? Because that was a part of leadership that John just wasn't good at. He just couldn't grasp that little nugget of leadership, so he hired it. So he would have the full leadership style that he needed for his company to grow and scale. It's amazing.
What prompted that evolution? I mean, of course, I'm sure you came to that realization pretty quickly, leaving the military. Maybe it was one that progressed. As you said, you worked as a cop for a little while, and it was a bit of a step down. And as you were getting back into civilian life, of course, you adjusted accordingly. But when did you reach that point where you realized that, my leadership style, it needs to change? And when you realized that, how did you actually go about pursuing the change that was necessary?
Well, I'll tell you what, I was in manufacturing for 16 years, automotive manufacturing. And the first automotive manufacturer I worked for is called the Prince Corporation, which are no longer here with us. I don't know if you have Eric Prince, his parents owned it, his dad started from a machine shop. They ended up getting bought by Johnson Controls, and that's a whole different story. But I remember during the interview there, it was really hard to get hired at this place. I went through 3 interviews before I got hired. And to give you a little background, I'm a boomer, the old guy, whatever you think about us boomers. But, resumes and all that stuff, back in the day, I never turned in a resume. If I wanted a job, I'd go to the place, I'd go knock on the door, go right in, talk my way into that job. You can't do that now. You got to have a resume. You can't get in front of the people you need to be. But I remember going through that process, and it was I think the third interview I had, one of the focus factory managers carried me out of the little interview room. And in that plant, if you go to the back wall of the front office, it was all glass. You could see out there all on the manufacturing floor. She asked me a really important question. She said, Kyle, look out there and tell me, what do you think the most important thing is you see out there on that floor? Of course, I'm thinking, oh, man, is this a trick question? I'm like, well, you got millions of dollars of machines out there, this. And she looked at me, she said, no, you missed it. She said, the most important thing out there on the floor are the people. People are your number one asset. And you know what? She hit the nail on the head. And she was absolutely right. Because I don't care what kind of equipment, robots, where it has, it still takes a human to design them, to develop them, to run them, to fix them, and all that stuff. That's what business owners need to understand. The number one asset of any business, it's not your money, it's not your equipment, it's your people. Because without the people, that business cannot survive, is not sustainable, nor will it be profitable. And so, with that in mind, always in the military, I always took care of my troops. They were number one. If I'm carrying 25 people out on patrol, mission's going to get accomplished, but my job is to ensure that I bring 25 soldiers back too, not to leave them, not to get killed, wounded, none of that. I carry 25 comes back. It's part of leadership, owner. And so I took that into the civilian world the same way, where as I looked at my people, just like I would my squad or my platoon. You know, I can't do this job without them, and I'm only going to be as good as my people are. And that's where I don't care if you're team leaders, supervisors, managers, CEOs, your company is only good as the people that you have running it. And I used to tell people when I'd go into businesses, even now, but even before that, if I'd go to a different plant or if I need to hire a supervisor or look to get rid of one, all I'd have to do is go out there on that floor, on that area that supervisor had, and with him or her not being there, and give me 15 minutes, I could tell you what kind of supervisor I had. Because a good leader, supervisor, his people are going to be a direct reflection of him or her and their leadership. You know, are they mentoring the employees? Are they rising up? Are they doing leadership? Making sure they're successful. Give them the proper tools they need. You know, keeping them motivated. And the motivation is a little different. Somebody goes, well, how do you motivate people? I can't motivate anybody. Motivation is an individual process. My job as a leader is to inspire you to do something. Mm-hmm. Not manipulate, but to convince and inspire you to do something. And you know, in today's world, you know how it is. What's everybody say? What's in it for me? And business owners goes, well, that's what you mean, what's in it for me? I'll give you a paycheck. It's more than a paycheck, guys. And I learned that in manufacturing. You've got to teach ownership. You got to give your employees, your people, ownership. Because if they have ownership, now they're part. That helps part of the alignment. Because, you know, typically, you know, we teach businesses. I teach businesses now. You know, when you hire, the hiring process, when you hire your people, you want to hire people that are aligned with your core mission, vision, core values. And that's part of the process when you're interviewing. Get somebody, are they a good fit? They're not. Maybe go through 100 to get 2 good employees. Well, that's okay. And you'll hear people say, no, I got to have a body now. You know, I saw it in manufacturing. That's manufacturing's biggest problem today. Because, you know, it's hard to find people working in that area. You know, if you have a heartbeat and you can breathe, okay, you're hired. Get on there. We can teach anybody how to work that line. Well, that's not necessarily so.
2 feet and a heartbeat. That's what some people say. Kyle, I'd love to shift gears here. I mean, it sounds like you really learned about the value of servant leadership, right? Leading from the front, becoming a true leader, and having people follow out of inspiration, right? Right. Actually giving them something more. But, you know, as that relates to business and your shift into business, great leadership doesn't make up for bad systems, just like great systems don't make up for bad leadership. And as I understand it, when you had your convenience store, you were running things by trial and error, right? Surely you had learned the values of true leadership by that point in time, but you had systems within the business that were broken, right? What happened with the convenience store that had you realize that, you know, something needs to change, I need to do things differently? What really brought that about?
Well, let me tell you, when I bought that convenience store, I was looking at 3 different businesses at the time. And the reason I was doing that, because that's the only time out of the 24 years of my wife that she's been a little nervous and saw it in her face. And I said, look, I'll never do anything to put us in a position where we'll do without. But when you're business shopping, I want to have everything laid on where whichever one I could pull the trigger on the quickest, because I was not going back to be a W-2 employee. I didn't see any future in that, you know. And why does most business owners become business owners? 1, they're tired of having a boss. They're tired of working for incompetent people, and God knows you do it. And 3, they want more control of their financial future, and that's what I wanted. And I'm not saying everybody's got to have employees, and that's fine. You can treat employees right. You can have not entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs. That's the kind of employee you need, that they're still doing it for everybody on the go to get the same place. Everybody be successful. And now me going on that tirade or telling you how to do that. Well, so anyway, let me tell you, I get going, and let me tell you, the first 6 months I sat in this store, and I was like begging somebody to come in. I'm like, God, just come in, I'll give you something. Because the guy I bought it from me just run it down. It was a piece of junk, and we really turned it around. And it took about a year for me to really start seeing where I'm at. So I'm looking at the books, and it's at the end of my first year. I'm like, well, dude, this is not enough money. I got to do something, because I'm not going back to work for somebody else. I've got to figure this out and make it work. What do I got to do? So what I think? Let me expand. Let me put food. So I did. I expanded 2,500 square feet. I put a full deli in. Took my wife away from her job. She ran the deli, and I ran another part of the store. And we did catering. We did roasted chicken. I had people from 3 counties come to my store. We got to be pretty famous in a little store. And we worked our butt off. But here's the problem. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no guidance, trial and error, and I have people argue with me a little bit going, trial and error works. No, it doesn't. It does. Now, I've got a client to this day that started and used trial and error till I came in the picture, and they built the business $25 million in revenue. But let me tell you what, they were one stumbling block away from that entire business collapsing because trial and error, you're not putting in the proper framework that you need to build a business. Build a business like building a building. You put in your foundation, you put in your floor, you get a little more money, else put another floor, and then say you get to the third floor you add on there, you put an in-ground pool and a walkout bar. Well, what happens? It falls in. Why? Because you didn't have the proper foundation. The concrete and rebar to hold that structure up as it's growing and getting bigger. And what's the old saying? You're all familiar with this. The bigger you are, the harder you fall. That's a fact. And that's why a lot of businesses don't even get past $1 million because nobody's showing them how to put the proper framework into place. And you talk about systems. In the convenience store, that's the problem. That's where I was lacking. I didn't really have systems. I did all the hiring and firing, and I kind of did the hip shooting off the hip. Well, this is what I'll do for this. I had a standard that some kind of OCD about things, and so every morning I do review my books every morning. Stores first open, 15, 20 minutes, boom. Then, I do my orders. I do these things. I had a routine, but I didn't have systems in places. I didn't even have a system for a proper way to hire people. And I went through some. And you're going to do that because I was just looking for somebody. I thought, well, anybody can work in the deli. I can train, a monkey to do what they do back there, which is bull, which is BS. I didn't have systems in place. And I know everybody hates systems. I dealt with systems the whole time in manufacturing, and I saw how they worked. Mm-hmm. Because on, say, an assembly line that's got 20 stations. Each station has operator instructions. So if you have a bad day and come in and forget how to do that, all you do is look at the station. You can do it. You can keep that line moving. It's a process. People hate processes because somebody's got to take the time, sit down, write them out, by the numbers, what you're going to do. But it's critical. No business can grow and scale without processes. Processes sets the employee up for success and sets the business up for success. Because if employee comes in to work and goes, okay, what do I do today? Well, if they don't have a supervisor to tell them exactly what they're doing, what are they going to do? They're going to sit around and twiddle their thumbs. Mm. Or, the supervisor says, well, just go do this. Well, okay, the employee goes and does whatever he's supposed to do. Well, he didn't do it the way the supervisor or maybe the operations manager wants it done. So they go and crawl the guy's butt. Hey, what are you doing? You're doing it wrong. Well, after the second time of that employee's gone. And he could have been the best employee you had. Why? Because you didn't have a system in place, onboarding. That employee needs to know what they do on a daily basis. And I have business owners go, they're not micromanaging, but to the step higher and tell them, not only do I tell you everything you do every day, use 8 steps. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to put them in the order, prioritize those for you. I want you to do these 5 first. Then if you get those accomplished, do the rest. Because I know that's going to set that employee up for success.
So what happened here, right? You didn't have the systems you needed. You had routines. You were making things work. But where did this ultimately end up with the convenience store? What did that lead to?
It'll lead to burnout, which is what happens to a lot of business owners today. Because we all think, oh, I've got to do it. I've got to do it. You cannot do it all. You can't be the marketing guy. You can't be the leader. You can't be the finance guy. You can't be the operator. You can't do it all. Nobody can do it all. And as you're growing a business, you go through these stages. And like at breakpoint 3, which is anywhere between 5 million and 8 million, there's 2 critical hires you have to make. And that's one, you as the leader, you're the owner, you're the inspiration. You need to hire 2 people. You need to hire a guy in charge, a builder, which is in charge of continuing raising your revenue, and then what we call a stabilizer, which would be like an operation manager. And that's the person that's going to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted in your business. Because if you don't put those in at that stage, you can't do it by yourself. You can't be everywhere. And that's what happened. Myself and the wife, we just got burned out. I'm working 16-hour days. And, with a convenience store, you got to be careful. I had about 6 employees. I had one that handled the register side, my side, that I could trust. Because, you can't have beer going out the back door and people's hands in the tills and all that. There's different ways to go through that. But a lot of business owners have this, I got to do it all. Nobody can do it better than me. I can do it better than anybody else. No. That's where leadership comes. You've got to train and teach your employees how to do it right. Duplicate what you're doing and grow and scale. We just got burned out, and that's what happens to a lot of business owners. They get burned out. They're like, screw this. I'm working. I wanted financial freedom. I'm making money, but I ain't got any time to spend it. I think 13 years I had 1 vacation. And let me tell you, this is a crazy story. When I took the vacation, I'd promised my daughter, time when she was 2 years old, I'd carry her to Disney World. I've been there as a kid. My wife hadn't. And, that's atrocious. I'm sorry, I'm not a big Disney fan, but that's hell. Standing in lines, 90-degree weather. Anyway, this 2-year-old smart brainiac kid, a couple years later, remembers that. And so I'd already promised her. So I booked it, all this, and that's when I was going through the growth phase in this convenience store. So story short, I'm downtown Epcot with the wife and the kid, and I get a phone call from my store. And one of the girls I kind of left in charge, I was gone, says, "This is 10 minutes for the lunch rush, and I have no water. The contractors hit my water line outside." I blew up. I'm downtown Epcot. I'm going, "Are you freaking kidding?" So I'd call my own personal plumbing contractor, said, "I don't care what it costs. Get out there and have that water on right now." Anyway, I ended up firing that contractor. But we just got burned out because I didn't understand how to hire the right people to scale and grow. I didn't have processes to onboard them the proper way, to train them the right way, and understand everything in place. So I didn't have to be the only guy doing it. The wife ran the deli. And I used to tell you got to write your little recipes down. Well, a little dash here, grandma's. Dash don't work. What if you're sick and Julie's got to come in and make that stuff? I need it written down to the T so a third grader that can barely read can come in and look at you and make that and put it out there, to sell to move the store.
So Kyle, what happened next? I mean, you burned out. You were at that breaking point. You were taking everything on yourself. Surely something must have clicked. You must have realized things need to be done differently. But what actually followed?
We know what followed. I just got burnt out. I'd been away from home 30 some odd years. I told the wife, and I knew the wife was really burnt out. I said, "Look, I know you're tired of this business. I'll sell it on one condition. I hadn't been home in 30 years. She said, "Let's go." And that's what brought me back to Georgia. And also on the side, I was doing real estate anyway. I've been in real estate for 20 some odd years. And so I was doing that. So we moved back to Georgia. In the meantime, I was selling life insurance and doing real estate. I've been in sales most of my life. And that was okay, but I still had that bug. I was kind of put off. I didn't know if I wanted to be a business owner. I said, "There's something I'm missing. I need to get the knowledge." So the next time I jump on a business, I can do it right and be successful. What am I missing? So that's where I ran into Grant Cardone. I became Grant Cardone licensee, as they called him back in those days. Now it's called a 10X business coach. And I went through his certification program. He's got quite the certification program. It takes about 3 months to get through it. And I'll say that program will actually take, a solopreneur from zero to $1 million within 12 to 18 months. You can get somebody there. But once you get the $1 million mark, what do? You don't have the tools. I did that for a couple of years, enjoyed it, helped a lot of business owners. I learned a whole lot, too. There's stuff that I had no idea. If I'd known that at a business, it'd been crazy. And then when he partnered with Brandon Dawson, and they came up with Cardone Ventures, they started this NX Business Advisor, and that's where I became a business advisor. And that gave me all the tools from the 1 million to 125 million or a billion. There's 11 breakpoints to billion, but there's 7 from 0 to 125 million. And so that gave me, I learned a lot from Brandon Dawson, my mentor, talking about this 10 elements of scale. And these are all these things that he came up with, not just his thoughts, but this is, he spent millions of dollars, $3 or $4 million every year researching this stuff. He wanted to know why are all these small businesses going out of business. And so he figured it out. People lie, numbers don't lie. And so that's the things that's running to. What does it take to grow and scale a business from 0 to 125 million? What is the processes? What are the requirements so you're sustainable and profitable? And he put them together. And that's what I teach people. There's 10 elements of scale. First one's strategy. Second's marketing and sales and operations, finance, people, leadership, data, and technology, and then investment thesis. And so all those, you got to kind of hit them in order. And I teach a lot of businesses, and I don't really care if you're at 0 or $1 million or if you're at 5 million. They still need the basics to get down. And that's 4 Ps. Okay? And what does that promote? Profit, process, and people. You can take a solopreneur, okay, that's, doing $10 a month, whatever he's doing. You got to start somewhere. I didn't start with a silver spoon. Everybody thinks you got to have money to make money. Not necessarily. I know people say that, but it helps. More money you got, the more you can grow. But you can start one without that. So it's promote. What you do. There's seven promotes in promote. What you do, how you do it, who you impact. What's your business proposition, all that stuff, and then teach your employees that if you got them. But I tell business owners, if you had hit $250,000 in income, you don't need to hire anybody yet. And they look at me like, "What are you kidding? I can't do everything." And I'm telling you. Because that's a baseline I go by. It's $250,000 to $500,000. It's called revenue per employee. What I mean by that is, say the business owner, I'm a solopreneur, I build my business. My first year I made $250,000. At that time, because your average solopreneur is probably making $65,000 to $70,000 a year, right? Give or take. Well, you can go get a W-2 job and make that. Sorry, you can. Without the headaches and nervousness and all this other. So at that point, you can afford to hire somebody else. What you do is now you hire that next employee, and you have systems in place, onboarding, what their job description is, and how to do it. All you're doing is hiring somebody to duplicate what you've done in the last year or 2 years, wherever it took you to get $250,000. So actually, you'd hire two instead of one. You had two, because then you can afford to hire two. So instead of now making $250,000 that year, now you're at $750,000 or $1.5 million. Depends on revenue per employee, and that's not hard. What that means is every person you bring on. Well, let me give you a little better example. If I were to ask you, hey, how many employees do you have? And you tell me 4. And I said, now, is that including you, business owner? Yeah. I've got 3 plus me. Well, automatically, I'm going to make the assumption that you ought to be doing at least $1 million in revenue, because that's $250,000 revenue per employee. Why is that important? Because the average company nowadays, small business, size business, are anywhere from about 15 to 18% profit margin. Well, I'm sorry, folks, that's not sustainable as a business. And it's sure not in a mode of the growth or scale mode. At $250,000 revenue per employee, you're at about 22 to 25%. And you can do that. And then I say 500, because you get over 500 revenue per employee, now what happens is you've got your employees, they're maxed out to the T, right? And so then you burn them out, you got to hire more anyway. But that's what happened. We just got burned out, and I got tired of it, and I learned the business. Yeah. And I said, well, let me go in and help people so they don't have to go through the hell I went through for mine.
Yeah. See, that's exactly it. And if we fast forward here a little bit, it sounds like the lessons that you took from the pains that you had owning a convenience store really paved the path forwards for you, right? So again, if we fast forward a little bit, what you're doing now is, you're working primarily with businesses, as you said, doing around $1 million in revenue, right? Helping them scale to that 125 million mark with the frameworks and a lot of the methodologies that you're mentioning now. But I mean, surely there's a lot of business owners out there in that position who don't necessarily realize that that's where they're stuck, right? With what you're doing now, how do you currently identify and attract these ideal clients who are actually ready for that type of systematic growth?
Well, I have these little sheets. I think the workshop is maybe 2 pages, and it's like 6 to 8 questions, and I have one in each area. It's called, I guess you call it, evaluation. They're doing a self-evaluation. I give them one for business strategy, I give them one for marketing, I give them one for sales, for finance, and they have to fill out simple one-line questions, and they rate themselves with an A, B, C, or D, a certain percentage. And then I get those, and then we have a discussion, and I ask them where they're at, what their business is doing, what's their biggest headache currently, what's going on, what's the biggest problem. And your business owner says, well, I got a whole bunch of problems. I get that. What is the number one thing that's going on in your business today that keeps you up at night when you go home? If you could solve that one thing, what is it? And then they tell me. Then I say, well, let me ask you this. If I can help you solve that problem, is that something you'd be interested in? Well, Lord, yeah. Well, that's what my job is, what business owners' jobs are. Solve people's problems, either with your product or your service. If you give them the wrong product, it's not solving the problem. You won't be successful. It's not about, let me sell the highest product I have. This, that, and the other. Let me hire this, that, and this. That's not it. It's about solving a problem, earning that business, and helping that business grow.
I'm kind of curious here, Kyle. I mean, these are the problems that you help other business owners with. Obviously, you have an incredible track record, and you have, a lot of credentials and experience behind your belt, right? Now, helping people solve these challenges as well. Surely there's also challenges you face within your own business. I'm kind of curious how it is you apply the lessons that you learned through the military, through having your convenience store, through learning how to be a servant leader. How is it, can you give us a little bit of insight as to how it is now you take what you learned through these pivots and through these critical moments to solving maybe perhaps the own challenges you have, or applying them to your own goals within Bulldog?
Well, absolutely. Well, you know what? I'm growing my current business the same way that I teach other businesses. I mean, by the numbers. It's not just talk. I'm walking the talk, okay? Because why would I tell you do it this way or that way if I'm not going to do it? If it works for me, if it works for you, why am I not doing it? And I tell people, before you go and hire somebody to help you grow and scale your business, 3 questions you need to ask them. First, what's the largest amount of revenue you've ever made in your life? 2, what's the largest company you've ever built? And quantify that by number of employees, revenue level, and profit. And the 3rd question you would ask them is, what's the largest exit you've ever helped a company come out of? Because you want somebody that has that, because that's the person you need to help you grow your business. One, you sure don't want to have somebody that's never made more than $50,000. You want to have a $200 million business. That's not the guy you're going to get advice from, because he's never done it. If they've never done it, how are they going to help you do it? And I do a lot of seminars, and I had one here into last year, and I brought that up. Here's things you got to talk about. And I had a guy go, hey, I got a question. I said, yeah, go ahead. He said, what's the largest amount of revenue you've ever made? I knew what was coming. I said, great question. And I said, so I told you that last business was $1.5 million. But before you ask your second question, I know what it is. Your second question is probably going to be, well, you just told us that somebody has to do at least what you want or more to qualify to hire you. What qualifies you to help me take my business to $10 million? I said, well, for starters, I've already helped businesses go from 5 to 10 to 15. My highest client currently went from 45, they're at 85 million, been working with me for a year, so I think I know what I'm doing. But the second part is, I've got I got a billionaire and a multimillionaire behind me that I can go to if there's something that I'm missing or something we need to get you that they've done it. Brandon Dawson sold his last company for $151 million, 77 times EBITDA, set a record on Wall Street, still there today. And let me tell you what his yearly income for that business was. This is what blows people's mind. $35 million, but he sold it for $151 million. Multiplier, EBITDA. People need to understand. These are things you need to understand in business. Most people get in business, they just want to make money and survive. The goal is, yeah, you want to do that. You have your mission, but you want to build a business so you don't have to do it all your life. Say you run it 20-something years and then sell it and have a big enough multiplier. Now you can enjoy the golden years. That's the whole purpose of it. Nobody wants to work till they're 90. I mean, I probably will because I can't sit around on my butt. That's just, maybe I've ADHD or whatever you got, whatever the ailments they call it. I've always got to be doing something. But yeah, in my business, let me take it back. When I first got this one, I had to put systems in place. How do I hire people? I promote. You'll see me all over social media. You want to come join my team? Here's your requirements. And I have a video on my website. Go check it out. And you'll see happy people and all this. And what's all this yah-yah stuff? That's the way we operate around here. There's no fluff, no bull. You're going to be happy coming to work for me because I'm going to take care of you because I'm growing a business. And you can ride this wave with me, or you can go work for somebody else with a glass ceiling, and you might get 40 cents more an hour for 10 years, or maybe if your salary or extra grand here or there. But let me tell you what, you can start with me as the guy that sweeps the floor. In a year and a half, you can become VP of my company. So tell me what kind of incentives are going to get you to work for Bob versus me. So I had to put those in place. And currently this year, I'm on track. I'm going to hire about 4 more advisors because I can't be everywhere. See, I'm into that where I can't do it all. I'm growing fast enough where I got to fill these slots, and it's a tough problem. So, that's a good problem to have. Mm-hmm. When I'm growing so fast, I've got to put the mechanisms in place so I can keep going and not fall down. So as you do it, you put in those frameworks, then you do it. I do the same thing. Same with people. I have my goals. My goals are posted on the wall. The mission, there's my mission. Here's the values, everything.
Kyle, with everything you're mentioning right now, you've developed some incredible systems and incredible approaches to leadership. You've learned some really valuable lessons along the way. Now you help others with these as well, right? When we're looking at business in general, a lot changes, but a lot stays the same, right? What might change are the tools that we have available. What might stay the same are the approaches that we have in the systems, especially around leadership, implementation, and thought processes as well. So when we're looking at things that change, right, most recently, some of the biggest impact that's being had on business is the change with AI, right? Now, when you're working with businesses who perhaps have had difficulty implementing systems and making changes and keeping up with the changing times, I'm sure that you also encounter some clients who struggle with implementing AI, whether it's on the technical level or it's on perhaps the psychological level as well, of feeling, I don't need this, I don't want this, I shouldn't need this, right? So when we're looking at AI, I'm kind of curious, where is that intersection of what you do and how you help your clients around systems and leadership and how they should think about changing times such as the AI revolution?
Well, the business world is evolving every day. There's no, you got some baseline set patterns, they teach you at Wharton and all this other stuff, that and $100 to get you a cup of coffee. You're not going to be a successful business owner going to spending $100,000 a semester going to Wharton. I know because I got a client that went there and said, you've taught me more in 90 days than I spent $1 million for in 4 years. I said, well, thanks. That's my goal. Sorry, you just overpaid. But yeah, AI, most businesses, when they get to about 25 million, all businesses change. They go from a cash basis to accrual basis. And if you got a sales team and stuff, that can really present some problems. But not only that, it's 25 million mark. When you get from 25 to about 35 million, a lot of businesses at that point in time have probably 3 or 4 different softwares or IT stuff they're used to getting different reports and stuff. And the problem is, 9 times out of 10, they don't talk to each other. And so as a business owner, you've got to make critical decisions. You need to make decisions fast, not sit and think about it forever. So you need to be able to run a report, but not 15 different types of platforms and try to put something together, something you can understand. So you need one thing. So instead of waiting till you get 15 softwares or IT programs you built up and then finally get rid of it, you invest all that money all those years, start going in now with the AI and do it. And I know a lot of people are scared of it. I wasn't real crazy about it either, thinking AI. But I remember the robot days, because I was automation. I had automation engineers work for me. I was a maintenance manager. And everybody thought, oh, the robots, it's going to kill all the jobs. No, the way it didn't. It still takes humans. AI is the same thing. It's got to be fed. But I use AI to this day. Most of my marketing stuff, I used to have 3 assistants that took care of all my marketing stuff. Not even more. I got 1. AI does the rest. Amazing. She programs the stuff in AI and it does it. And another thing, part of AI, which is really great, it can simplify things and make things. That's less bodies. Somebody goes, well, it's taking jobs. Well, instead of having to have a person, if you got an AI that can do some of these minor, important, but maybe not that important tasks, why not? It's saving you money. I'm not saying keep somebody getting a job, but have that person do something more important, more advantageous towards the growth and scale of the business. Let that take care of the stuff you don't want to deal with. You follow my market, it does. It posts stuff on social media. It does copy, it can do photos. I mean, AI is growing every day just tremendously. And I know it scares people because most people are scared of what they're not aware of. I was the same way. And I'm still learning. Do I know it all about AI? No. But I tell people, do not avoid it because it's coming. It's not going away. And any businesses that want to shun AI and not, so I'm not doing that stuff. Dude, you're not going to make it because your competitors are going to take that and they're going to manipulate it and they're going to modify it and they're going to blow you out of the water and you're going to be not existent. Mm-hmm. So there's things you have to get to. So what do business owners do? Get educated on it. Do you have to know all the technical aspects? No. I teach marketing to all my business owners. Am I a marketing expert? I know a lot about marketing, but I am the last guy in the world you're going to hire to come develop your website because I know nothing about WordPress. I know because I had a marketing business for several years before I had this. Started this one, and I had 12 people I hired out of Chicago that did all that. I can talk it, sell it, figure out how to fix your problems, but I'm not the guy doing the technical stuff. Dealing. I'm not writing code, none of that stuff. I had 12 people do it. And WordPress, I got it in mine one time, about tore it up. And they said, boss, please don't do that. If you got a problem, call us. I'm like, nope, you worry about the clients. But anyway. Yeah, but it's critical. You got to stay on top of things because business, everything in the world evolves. And it does. You've got to be part of that. And you need to have the wherewithal and the leadership to say, instead of being scared of this, let's hit it head on. Let's get ahead of the curve. Let's get some information, get somebody in here that can explain it to me in layman's terms and see how we can implement that in my business to help me grow and scale bigger, better, faster. And I'm doing it. I'm learning every day. There's more and more. Now, I will tell you, I've got a buddy using AI. He's trying to train a model now to replace a sales team. Now, personally, I got a problem with that. Mm. Ultimately, is that maybe possibility? Yeah, I can't rule it out. I don't know. I mean, AI is it's getting crazier and crazier. I mean, they say it's supposed to be thinking like a human before it's over with. Who knows? But I'll tell you right now, sales and business is about relationships. And I don't care what computer you got. You're not building a relationship with a freaking computer. And I'm going to tell you, as a Southern guy, I can ask questions that can throw AI through a tizzy. I don't care what you programmed in there because you can't program every question you may have. You get close, what have you. And people do business with people. They don't do business with robots. They don't do business with companies. It's relationship oriented, and people need to understand that. That's not to push AI aside. AI, there's a lot of advances you can do with that. It can simplify a lot of things. Tracking business owners, biggest thing I run into, they don't track anything. Hey, how do you track your sales? Well, revenue, I get this much revenue a month. Well, what if your revenue drops 30%? Well, how do you know what caused that? Well, I don't. That's why. I track everything. I track calls made, calls received. I track my marketing through AI, tracks it for me. So I can hit a button every day, every morning, and I hit the button, I get a full report where I'm sitting all the way across the company. Finance, marketing, sales, operations, I know everything that's going on in 2 minutes, and AI allows me to do that. So
Sure,
people
it's a
need.
very, very different morning than it was when you were reviewing your financials as a convenience store owner.
Oh Lord, are you kidding? Night and day. Me and Dale hated me. I'm calling him, cussing him out because my hard drive quit one time. And
Kyle,
QuickBooks and stuff. I was not I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not a technical guy. I can do stuff, but I'm getting better. But you have to be able to do that. And if you don't
Kyle,
know, bring the people in that have that expertise. I've
Kyle, I
got
want
I
to thank
got
you
I
so
got a
much. I want to
AI
thank you
guy
so
that I
much
brought
for.
in to help me. I don't explain AI to me, buddy. I don't do it. And pretty soon I'll hire. That'll be a permanent AI person because I don't want to know all that coding. I'll hire
Sure.
my own. What I don't do well, I hire out. What I do well, I do myself.
That's the way to do it. Kyle, I want to thank you so much for joining the Growth Shift today, sharing your story, your insights, your frameworks, and your lessons and perspectives with the audience. One final question for you. If you could go back to give your convenience store owning self one piece of advice about building systematic foundations for growth, what would that be?
Get the knowledge you need to be sustainable and profitable, and ensure you're getting the right knowledge from the right person. I didn't have anybody helping me.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on another episode of The Growth Shift. If this conversation sparked something for you, whether it's a new perspective on failure, a strategy you want to try, or just the reminder that every setback can become a setup for something bigger, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, the leaders who thrive aren't the ones who avoid change. They're the ones who shift strategically through it. If you're ready to build the systems that help you grow without the chaos, head over to valentix.io. We help businesses like yours scale smarter, not harder. I'm David Zilstra, and I'll see you in the next shift.